The night before Leyte, that'd be the first time I saw suicide planes. Well, I saw a lot of ships get hit. It was day and night. They were just coming in constantly. You just don't realize how close you are to getting killed.
Hey everyone, I'm Josh from Memoirs of World War II, and real quick, before we get into our veteran's story, I wanted to tell you about who we are and how you can help with this project. Memoirs of World War II is an organization run by myself and my family. We travel all over, interviewing the last living veterans of the Second World War and sharing their stories in this series to ensure that their service and this important history is never forgotten. We are funded by donations from people like you, both through Patreon, where you can choose what dollar amount you'd like to give, and through our website. So follow the links in the description below and you can be part of preserving this history. Thank you for your support, and now on to our veteran's story.
Figure in those days, you've heard of the Great Depression? Well, they were the Great Depression days. And what started to pull us out of the Depression was the war. The Great War effort, just supplying goods for the war. When the war broke out, I enlisted because I thought it was the thing to do.
After completing basic training, Charles Sammis was placed aboard the USS Maddox, a brand new destroyer of the United States Navy. It wasn't long before Charles and the Maddox took their first voyage out to sea.
But I was on it from the day it went on its shakedown cruises, and then joining the Mediterranean Fleet. And a lot happened. I mean, we've been in several sub-attacks and air attacks, but sub-attacks were the ones that were really dangerous. You couldn't see your enemy. We've had torpedoes shot at us. This one time, when I was on watch, seen this torpedo coming, and it was almost on the ship. I couldn't report it. I was froze. Somebody on the port side said, "Torpedo just crossed the bow," and it missed. Then the captain and the officers, they just questioned everybody on the starboard side of the ship. And they all said, "Yeah, we saw it." But we just held on waiting for the hit. Because by the time you tried to report it, it would have been all over.
Having finally driven German forces out of the continent of Africa after nearly 3 years of war, the Allied forces now begin to focus their attention on Nazi-occupied Europe. In July of 1943, the invasion of Sicily had begun, and the USS Maddox joined the assault. But only 24 hours into the battle, the Maddox service in the invasion would come to an abrupt end.
I was in what they call the Black Gang. I was in the fire rooms. That was my station. And they were bringing meals around. The cook told me, he said, I wouldn't be getting anything to eat on watch in the fire room. I had to go up and relieve the bridge watch. So I went up and I relieved the bridge watch. The captain, he come out of the, what you call the wheelhouse or the chart room. And he come up and back of me and he put his hand on my shoulder. He said, "How's everything going, son?" And I can remember, "Everything's going fine, Captain." And he turned back, went in, and that was it. It went. I didn't see the plane coming. It was a German bomber. He could see the wake that our ship was making. That's when the props are spinning. It's almost like a light behind the ship because you're kicking up this phosphorus and it makes a glow. And it gave him a perfect target. He dropped 3, I guess they were 500-pound bombs. 1 missed, 2 were direct hits. I don't think there was a shot fired at him. It was just, he just made that run fast and that was it. When that hit, I flew from the chair that I was sitting on, and it blew me right up against the bulkhead, that would be the wall. And just that fast, I hit the wall, water was coming up around me. So it just happened so fast. The bow came up, and it just tilted to the starboard, and then came up and straight down. And that's when I put my foot up again, right up against the hull, and just pushed myself away. I just kicked off, and I could just see that ship disappear. I'm just out there drifting by myself, and this is maybe 5:30 in the morning. I don't know the exact time. And I got picked up maybe 2, 3 o'clock in the afternoon. It was a seagoing tug that picked me up. The tug put me on a transport called the Louie. And there's really, that old saying, there's no rest for the weary. When I come aboard, they put me on a gun. And the only thing I had was a pair of shorts on, and I have bunker oil on me, and I'm on a 20-millimeter gun. Because there was an awful lot going on in that area. I mean, it's a major invasion. The next day, after we were put aboard the Louie, they dropped us someplace off along the coast of Africa. I don't know just where.
Exhausted and having had his fill of combat, Charles was relieved to learn that he was being sent back to the United States.
And I was put on an oil tanker, the Niobrara, and we came back to Norfolk, and I went into the Norfolk Navy Yard. And then getting started all over again. Going into amphibious training, learning how to drive landing craft, and out to the Pacific. We went on down through the Panama Canal and on up and out through the Pacific, and we were just into it. The night before Leyte, that'd be the first time I saw suicide planes. These suicide planes attacked the convoy. They were after this aircraft carrier, and they hit it. And then going to the beach, and then you have many jobs to do then, because my job is on small boats. You're going from one ship to another, picking up something, taking it to the beach. The mortar fire was just coming in from all over the place. You couldn't find a foxhole to jump into. They were just full, because I tried that. Oh gosh, you're just looking for a hole to crawl into. I just jumped into one of these tractor ruts. It was just enough that almost covered me, and I laid there. And I could look up. I'm right between 2 LSDs that were on the beach. The one to my left, I seen it take a direct hit, and you just seen bodies gone. You just don't realize how close you are to getting killed. I'd say the Philippines, Leyte was the worst out of the 3 battles I was in there. Okinawa, that was the toughest one out of all of them. I mean, that was rough. Day and night suicide planes. They were just, when they come up, the flak in the air, the sky is just black with anti-aircraft fire. Well, I saw a lot of ships get hit in that. It was day and night. They were just coming in constantly.
The grueling Battle of Okinawa would prove to be the bloodiest conflict in the Pacific theater. By the end of June 1945, the battle was over, leaving behind a staggering 122,000 dead American and Japanese soldiers. Having seen more than he could have ever fathomed, Charles was once again sent back to the States.
When I got back, I was in the Treasure Island Hospital. It wasn't too awfully long when the war was over. And I didn't want any parts of being over in San Francisco then, because it was a madhouse. Celebrating the end of the war. But hey, that's the way it was. My combat duty in the European theater was, hey, that was significant. And then going to the Pacific, when I think about it, that's all I was doing. I was in combat all the time. And I know there are a lot of men in the service never got out of the country. But it just seems, though, that I was always in one of these invasions. Yeah. But here I am.
With the war finally behind him, Charles had an opportunity for true closure when fate would once again bring him across the German pilot who sunk the USS Maddox.
As years went by, I went to a reunion, and the German pilot did come to the reunion, and I met the German pilot, getting his side of the story, the German side. I had no hard feelings or contempt for anyone. He was in the service, and he was just doing what he thought was his job. I'm sure he loved his country. It was quite an experience, just being there with him.
Hi everyone, I'm Josh from Memoirs of World War II, and I just want to say thank you for watching this episode. Our goal is to capture as many World War II veteran stories as we can from all over the world, but we can't do it alone. If you'd like to help us in this mission, consider supporting us through Patreon and check out our website, memoirsofworldwar2.com, for more information. If you haven't already, be sure to subscribe to our channel and click the notification bell so you don't miss a single episode. Again, we want to thank you for your support, and thanks for watching.